Hi, welcome to the Medical Futurist live Q&A. I hope everything is working. We always have some technical issues, but hopefully everything is going well both on Facebook and on YouTube Live. My name is Dr. Bertalan Meskó. I'm the Medical Futurist, and I couldn't wait to be here with you today. Normally, we would meet in a lecture hall, in a conference room, somewhere around the globe, but due to some quite well-known circumstances, now welcome to my home. This is where I work with a few monitors, where I do my research with colleagues around the world. This is where we organize the team of the Medical Futurist to give you analysis and context around digital health every day on medicalfuturist.com and its social media channels. So, welcome home. I hope you will have a great time with me. In the next 56 minutes or so, I will try to answer as many questions as I can. And also I will try to give you as practical responses as possible. I know I always say this, but this topic is my favorite one. Talking about how digital health technologies can help you live better and healthier life. It is just my all-time favorite. I've been living my life just like that for over a decade now. So please feel free to ask any questions about lifestyle, health or disease management, anything that's around using digital health technologies for shooting for a longer and healthier life. Krista, our social media manager, will help you out in the comment section. She will moderate everything right there. And if we have an analysis published on medicalfuturist.com already, she will share the link so we can have a live discussion on the YouTube section. Akhil, SL, welcome to the stream, and everyone else. Let's jump right into it. Let me give you a little bit of introduction about why it's such an important topic. How digital health technologies can help us live longer and healthier lives. It doesn't start with using technologies, obviously. When I first had this idea that I would love to improve my lifestyle and my behavior in the long term, in 1997, when I was 13 years old, I know it's a bit ridiculous, but I had the idea that I had no gadgets around me, obviously. So I wanted to create a method through which I could better know myself. And the idea I came up with was giving scores to my physical, mental, and emotional health on a scale of 1 to 10. Let me show it to you. Just like this. The questions I asked myself every single day was how healthy I feel physically between 1 to 10, how happy I am between 1 to 10, and how I could focus, learn that day, how my cognitive health was in general between 1 to 10. And I started doing this on paper. I think I did that for a few years. And the last decade or so, I switched to an Excel spreadsheet. So now I have a better image. But after doing this on paper for 2 weeks, I learned my algorithm. And my algorithm was, if I can exercise today, then I can focus better cognitively on the same day. So in general, on the long term, I will feel happier. I'm such a simple person. But I can show it to you that this actually works in action. This is the scores I gave to, this is the number of minutes I spent exercising. Oh, here it is. This is the number of minutes I spent exercising every day during a year. And you can see it's quite steady. I exercise about 30 minutes on average every day. And just one tiny detail here. Here you can see quite a gap where for more than a week or so I couldn't exercise because I had food poisoning that summer. And if we look at the mental scores, the cognitive health I gave to myself, you can see quite a decline here because I couldn't exercise after the food poisoning. Even more than a week after that, I didn't feel that well. And emotionally, the same thing happened. So it's like quite a simple algorithm. But again, it starts with scores and not devices. When I knew what kind of algorithm I worked by, then was the point when I started looking for devices that could help me live a healthy and long life. And that's what I did. So today we will dive into some of these examples. I plan to show you a few gadgets that I use, some of them every day, others, once in a while. And I will also try to answer all the questions that you have during the stream. So as there are some questions already, let's start with those. And also I received some through Eventbrite. So I will start with that one. The first is from Henry Copeland. It's quite an interesting question. Henry Copeland asked me, will we see integrated e-health emerge first in a less regulated country, and if so, then which one? I guess the answer is yes. I wouldn't say less regulated, I would say a country where they either provide healthcare through digital health methods or they cannot provide healthcare at all. And I'm not sure that it will happen, as I think in Rwanda, in Central Africa, it has already happened. After the genocide they had more than 20 years ago, they didn't have the investments, the money to build a traditional healthcare system, so they had to reach out to digital health technologies, and they invested into artificial intelligence, they invested into telemedicine, and now 60% of the population have access to telemedical services. We even wrote an analysis about this with in-depth insights from many experts around the field about how Rwanda has been becoming the Wakanda of digital health. So I think it is happening already in these countries because they have to take a leap instead of just taking a few steps forward. And digital health is the one that can help them take a leap and fill gaps that we see in healthcare today. Another question came from Karim Emor. And the question was about what are the most efficient watch sensors to track COVID signs? It's a really good question, especially nowadays that there are some new studies showing that fitness trackers, especially Fitbit, the data coming from these trackers can help predict the symptoms of COVID-related diseases. And the symptoms, the data they're looking for include heart rate variability, breathing rate, and of course temperature. Body temperature will be a fourth thing here. I'm not aware of a device that can do all the four while you can wear the device constantly. Maybe the Oura Ring is one example. I know they track body temperature, but I'm not sure if they can track breathing rate and heart rate variability. But these are the health parameters and physiological signs that could be very helpful in predicting a COVID disease in anyone wearing a fitness tracker. All right. Third question coming from Sarah Bibi. And the question is about what are the best 2 or 3 sensor sites? Well, the ones I follow personally, and my threshold is pretty high about which resources I follow. I have 2 favorite sites in this sense. One is mobihealthnews.com. Let me share the link. And the other is mobihealthnews.com. And the other one is madgadget.com. I know that these sites have amazing editorial boards. I know that these sites have editors who have been dedicated to the cause of digital health, and that even if I guess some of them accept sponsorships, why we don't, they still try to write objective reviews about new gadgets and sensors. So I watch and follow them for news about the digital health sphere. All right. In the meantime, Rashid, Gina, welcome to the stream, and thank you for the questions. I will try to answer all of them one by one. The next one, Gina had a question that I'm copying here. I'm sorry for the typos. I can't change everything here. When will advanced AI hospitals be up and running in the UK? Went to the emergency hospital in the UK, and it took them 5 hours to complete the process of diagnosis. Well, I think we've been there, all of us. It's a good question. I think when the question implies the whole country would adopt advanced AI, then I have to say it's far away in the future. But when it comes down to regions or individual institutions, then it's a different question. And we know that in the NHS, the Moorfields Eye Hospital has adopted AI already, as they started a partnership with DeepMind, the quite exciting UK-based, Google-backed AI company. And they focus on using artificial intelligence-based decision support system to analyze retina scans that not even physicians can do these days, even nurses and assistants can do, and the AI support can give them a good help about how to diagnose the patient. But when it comes to diagnosis, it's a different question, and I have really good debates with other people who are enthusiastic about AI, just like I am. But when I describe that diagnosing a patient is not a linear process, it's not like I can measure data and health parameters and everything, and then I can get to a definitive diagnosis just based on data. Unfortunately, that's not how medicine and not how patients work. So in triaging patients in an emergency care center, I can imagine using AI to find out which patients should have priority based on some initial symptoms, some basic data they could share through their sensors with the medical institution. But to get to the diagnosis with the help of AI, I'm afraid it's still quite, far in the future. I'm talking about years, if not a decade from now, because when even IBM Watson failed at this, and I'm not saying failed, but they couldn't deliver they couldn't live up to the expectations that we all had about them and the expectations they tried to build around them when they introduced the service. So again, regional and maybe sporadic examples will show that advanced AI should be used in everyday medicine and healthcare. Wow, Monica Feldman, who is one of our patrons on patreon.com, which I will talk about later, don't worry about that, asked a question about what's going on in personalized nutrition, precision medicine. Well, these are two really different and huge fields. In personalized nutrition, we are seeing a lag that companies that claim that they could bring personalized nutrition to practice haven't really delivered. It might change in the near future, but I will show you in a few minutes a few gadgets that are showing signs in that direction. But still, I don't feel that I can access personalized nutrition. Let's jump right into that so I can answer the question through details about gadgets. Here is a few examples about some food sensors that are in use today. What you can see here is the so-called NEMA sensor. These are these pyramids. One is for detecting gluten, and one is for detecting peanut content in your food. And what happens is they sell these capsules, and actually that's the hardest part about this device, that you have to buy one capsule per one sampling process, which doesn't sound so great. But the way it works is that I tried to open up one capsule for you. Here it is. And what happens is I have to unscrew the cap. I can put food here, either liquid or like a peanut, or just some parts of my meal through my fork. I screw the cap again until it clicks, and then I have to put it into the device. And when it's done, I click OK, and I can watch through my smartphone that in about 3 or 4 minutes, it analyzes the content of the sample, and it lets me know if it contains gluten or peanut. It's quite a straightforward process. It is personalized nutrition. But first, the NEMA app doesn't work right now, so I wanted to show you a sampling process, but I couldn't. And second, even if the device says that your sample contains gluten or doesn't contain gluten, it means that sample, that nothing else. Maybe on your plate there can be different parts where you have gluten, but you cannot tell because, that's how the device works. Still, I think it's a game changer, but we only have food sensors like this, aimed at specific problems such as food allergy. Another thing about personalized nutrition is when it comes to how you eat. And this is one of the weirdest devices I've ever come across. This is called the Happy Fork. There's a French company behind them, and they base the whole idea of the technology on a study showing that if we eat faster, then we eat more, because we don't feel that we are full enough, so we keep on eating. And the way it works is I click on, it vibrated, there's a green sign here, a green signal, and when I started eating with it, after the first fork serving, everything was all right. But when I just wanted to have a second one quite fast, it started vibrating and there was a red signal, meaning that you are eating too fast, so let's slow it down, and that's enough for now. I'm not saying it doesn't make you anxious. It did make me anxious while eating, but I learned how fast I eat, and I think it's a good sign that if a technology tells you that you have a bad behavior, so let's change that, then I think eating a few times with this fork helped me keep this behavior change in mind all the time. So right now we have gadgets like this, and also one thing that I found useful in nutrition was the microbiome test that I've had with many companies, and they sequence the DNA of the bacteria that live in my digestive system. So I learned a few tips and tricks, nothing serious, nothing medically useful. Some tips and tricks about what kind of diet I should have based on my microbiome, what things I should change, what kinds of food I should remove from my diet, or what others I should eat. Like the company Atlas Biomed still keeps sending me details about like food recommendations every week, what kind of foods I should consume. I want to show you how it works in action in a second. So I'm sharing the results of my DNA with you right here. So I had this, this is the insights dashboard where I can check out like what probiotics they think I would need, how about my microbiome diversity, what kind of disease risks I have based on these details. And here is the recommendation part. Every week or so, they change what kind of things I should eat more of because of my genetic background and because of my microbiome. They also like make recommendations here, which are general ones. They even say that, so these are not so much personalized based on my DNA, but there are nutrition traits that I learned about which can be useful. Oops, bear with me here. No. Oh, we are getting there. Okay. So probiotics, microbiome type. I have the Western gourmand type, like so many of us do, and they tell me what it means for my diet, and so on. So I'm not sure I've learned anything clinically important, but I think it has been useful to learn about these tips and tricks in my life. Wow, amazing questions are coming in, so I go back to answering a few of them. Rakesful asked about this exact question here. Almost there. Now, so if it's a bit longer than it should be. If I want to have a highly optimized and personalized diet, is Nutrigenomics accurate and reliable enough? Should I add the microbiome test to the formula? The answer is Nutrigenomics is capable of helping you with that, but I couldn't show you one Nutrigenomics service that you could use right now and get these results. That's what I'm saying, that the technology is there, the scientific background is absolutely there, but companies are lagging behind. And there are companies like Habit, Nutrino, and DNA Fit that try to do this, to fulfill this mission, but I haven't been able to test any of them or see that any others tested them and were okay with the results. Wow, there are some really long questions here, which I will have to try to make a bit shorter. Sahin said that hello, greetings from Turkey. Hi. E-health, it's a very long question. E-health startups started to increase very rapidly. Is there any chance that it will turn into e-health startup trash after a while? Because some of them are really good, but some are just trying to get support funds. Absolutely, that's what's happening right now. Because what happens is you see many startups trying to ride the wave that was generated because of the pandemic, and many of them just don't know how to deal with digital health issues. So it's one thing that you are good at the technological bandwidth part of the process. There's one thing that you're good about, the healthcare background, and you know how to treat people and build services for them. But to build a service that is based on the concept of digital health, which is that the data should be available to both patients and physicians, that's a different animal in the zoo. And I haven't seen many companies being able to adopt that concept well enough, while I see many that are just trying to get funding and they claim that they have AI while they only have an Excel spreadsheet and some macros. They claim that they really rediscovered and reinvented the whole concept of telemedicine, while what they do is what 1,000 other companies are doing. So yeah, I guess that's going to happen, but that's normal. That has happened in different industries too. And that's why we should have a high threshold, not just as consumers and users, but also from the policymaker perspective. They should have a clear image and knowledge about what threshold they need to make sure that companies have to get over that threshold, and privacy-wise, data-wise, and digital health-wise, they would create useful services. But we are still quite far from that. Rashid asked a nice question about sharing DNA information. It's about, how do you feel about sharing your DNA info with private companies? Well, like I had a choice. I don't have a choice. Either I reach out to a private company and I pay them to sequence my DNA or do a genetic test and give me some results based on that, or that's it. I don't know about any other services that would be provided from a government and people would be able to access them. Maybe in Estonia, it's part of the healthcare process. And of course, there are some health insurance companies worldwide, and there are some medical conditions where genetic tests can contribute to finding and choosing the right treatment. But myself living in Budapest, I don't have a choice. Either I share my private data with them, or I'm not able to access the results of my own DNA sequencing service. I can't see what kind of risks and risks I have for medical conditions and what kind of precautions I should keep in mind. So yeah, I feel that my private information is leaking out of my system, but as long as I'm the one deciding how much of my privacy I'm giving up in exchange for something clinically useful that might give me a chance for a longer and healthier life, as long as that's the case, I'm fine with it. So for now, I'm okay with it. Wow, there's a question from Phoebe, and that's very close to my heart. Thank you so much for asking about that. Do you think digital health is better and trendy wordings in future healthcare? I guess it comes down to all the buzzwords you hear about. Health IT, e-health, mobile health, artificial intelligence, and digital health. These things are different, and we published a paper describing how these terms are interrelated. The biggest term is e-health. Anything that's electronic and comes to healthcare is called e-health. M-health is only about using smartphones for healthcare purposes. And digital health is more like a concept, because digital health is describing a cultural transformation that is using disruptive technologies that can share the data with both medical professionals and their patients. And this is the new concept that the other terms just cannot describe. And this is the newest concept that is the most important one in the 21st century. So I prefer using digital health, because even in our research, we focus on digital health technologies, because both patients and medical professionals can access the data and the technologies that we are talking about. So thank you for this question. So I could at least elaborate a bit on that. All right, a few more, and then we go back to checking a few devices. Wow, I'm trying to choose some shorter questions here. Jiron had a question about blood pressure monitors, and why you might think it's not an exciting question, but it is. The question was about how will the blood pressure technology evolve? The normal blood pressure cuff is the traditional kind of technology that all of us know and everyone is using worldwide, and we know that it's quite a norm when it comes to blood pressure monitoring. But I've tested the Omron's smartwatch that was designed to measure blood pressure, and I thought that that would be a game changer. But that device is actually a huge one. It was not comfortable to wear, and it measures blood pressure through the same pressure-based method. So every once in a while, it prompts you to stop, to sit down, to elevate your arm onto the level of your heart, and then sit still for a minute or so while it is measuring blood pressure. This is not something you would expect from a innovative concept. So I think the really next step that blood pressure technologies could take would be about using an algorithm by checking just heart rate and heart rate variability, and using an algorithm to try to extrapolate from that into blood pressure measurements. I think for the first time using such a device, it will be important to have a reference measurement with a blood pressure cuff, but then based on the data that the algorithm would be able to compare, it would be able to give you blood pressure measurements. I'm not saying with 100% accuracy, but almost. So I guess that's the next big thing to do. The new smartwatch from Samsung Galaxy, the Samsung Galaxy 3, I think will be able to do that without using the pressure-based method. So I'm looking forward to testing that in action. Okay. I would love to dive more into living with digital health technologies, and I love the fact that you asked such a big picture questions about the future of pharmacies and the role of radiologists, but really let's focus on how to live with digital health technologies today. Okay. Getsky 1200 asks about whether any tips on sorting out good startups from future Theranos analogs. I think there are two answers for this question. From one perspective, there are companies that want to do the same mission that Theranos had, to provide a one droplet of blood kind of blood testing service in a direct to consumer way. And I think the technology is possible, and theoretically it is possible to create such a service. I think they will make it. Although from the other perspective, I guess the analog can also refer to avoid same mistakes that so many investors and reporters have made while assessing the quality of Theranos. And I think the answer for that question lies in the power of the scientific method, that we have to still base every decision we make about which technologies to implement into healthcare on evidence-based medicine. If they can prove what they claim that they are able to do through peer-reviewed studies and clinical trials, just like in the old days, there's a reason why it works like that in healthcare, I will be the biggest supporter of that company's goals. But if they cannot, they just claim they can do something, but there is no scientific evidence behind that, even if it is the best invention in the history of medicine, no one in healthcare will be able to use that. So I'm afraid even in 20 years from now, technology companies will have to be able to prove the scientific value of their method through peer-reviewed studies. That's how we can avoid stories like what Theranos had before. Wow, there's a really important question from Daniel Hiskiyahu. And the question is from Israel, and the question is about how do we see tech advancements meet with continuity of relationships? Don't they interfere with each other? I think it's a similar question to when reporters asked people from Apple in 2007 when the first iPhone came out, that isn't this the end of human relationships, that now we can have a smartphone and just look at that and get information from there and have discussions with that, and that's it. And then now we live our lives with friends and family scattered around the world, and I can only keep in touch with them because we use smartphones. So I think in a way it led to a deterioration of relationships, because how bad we are at changing behavior or adopting the new technologies. But in the general sense, I think these technologies improve relationships. I'm not saying the quality of them, but the quantity of them for sure. We can get in touch with more people, and it comes down to our individual perception of how we want to build our relationships, and when we need to get away from them and from the use of technology. So I think in a way they help build relationships instead of deteriorating or reducing them. Philip has a great question. I love these kinds of questions because there is no answer for them. Do you think there should be a European-wide data standard for healthcare data? I think there should be, but it would make no sense to have one. The reason why is we just published the analysis last week on medicalfuturist.com about why digital health makes healthcare globalized. And we argue that I could use a service in Belgium. They could compare my data to the data of others through American cloud. And then I could use a French pharma company's product on a Spanish island without meeting anyone in my healthcare system. So in that case, even if there is a European healthcare standard for data standardization, what's the use of it when my data is going from a European cloud to an American one, and then from a Hungarian healthcare perspective, I can share my data through different services. So I more believe in the importance of globalizing healthcare, because when patients have access to technologies and information, and the 21st century they do, they want, if they know they have a choice and they can reach out to technological companies globally and get a better healthcare service for their medical condition than the service that their healthcare provider, health insurance company, or government can provide, they won't hesitate to reach out and make their own healthcare globalized. So I think global solutions are needed here. Even a global FDA would be needed here, to have an agency that has a oversight about these startups and companies that can provide services across the globe, literally in healthcare, of course. All right, I wanted to show you just a few other things, and thank you so much for the questions. Please keep them coming in. I will try to answer as many as I can, but I also want to touch upon the topic that we have today, and this is living our lives and improving lifestyle with digital health technologies. And I wanted to show you a few more of these, such as the ones I use like every month or so, and these are ECG devices. I know I talked briefly about them last time, but you know, the fact that it's possible today to do an ECG and I can share the results with my medical professional, my general practitioner, plus I can even store it in the cloud and get an algorithm, analyze it. I think it's mind-blowing. And only a few years ago as a medical student, I had to go around with those huge carts, having those amazingly big machines on them, and I got paper as the end product. So now it's different. I grabbed this Viatom Check Me Pro device. I touch two steel sensors. I put my third finger right here, and in a second or so, it starts analyzing my heart rate, my ECG, my heart rate variability, and the oxygen content of my blood. It's 97%. My heart rate is 85, and it's going up because I'm trying to get through as many questions as possible. And in a few seconds or so, I will get the results as well as the analysis about what I can expect. You can see two smileys here, so I'm not gonna die in the next few minutes. One, not right like this. So my heart rate is on the top, and then the oxygen saturation. I can go into the details. No, not this one. Like this, I can share it with my general practitioner. It's really amazing. So even ECG devices are accessible these days. And the one you can see here is the Vive device, which is made by a Hungarian company, and they can do the same ECG, heart rate variability, and they are trying to detect risk of stroke based on atrial fibrillation. And then the quite famous Cardia device, which is now a 6-lead device, not just a one-channel ECG like these ones, but a 6-lead ECG, and which is almost a clinical grade 12-channel ECG. And they have about 40 medical studies and clinical trials backing their technology. So it's quite reassuring when you see a device being tested by so many independent research groups and clinical groups to make sure that the ones we use are of clinical value. All right, so let's get back to a few more questions. We have a bit more time. Louise Venables have a great question about the future, and I love these questions because it allows me to think a bit about what might happen next. What technologies, therapeutics are you excited about seeing in the future? First of all, and of course that's the biggest one, using artificial narrow intelligence in decision support. This is far the most exciting thing in the future. The notion that a physician shouldn't be able to go through 30-40 million papers, and of course it's physically impossible to do that, but an AI would be able to do that and only provide the bits of information from different studies and networks of ideas and data sets that physicians should know about when it comes to that patient's case. That's mind-blowing. On the other side, me using health trackers to try to live a healthy lifestyle and using an AI-based decision support system to make even better decisions about my behavior change, wow, it sounds like an amazing idea. Just imagine having a chatbot-based device in your head, in your ear, on your phone all day long that can give you the right recommendations. Like it would tell me that you've been sitting for 3 hours, but this is the best time of the day with this weather, under these circumstances, you have the best running sessions. I know you hate running, but now you're gonna enjoy it. I will give you the best playlist that you love to listen to. And can you imagine that, giving such personalized recommendations? Maybe dropping a Monty Python joke in there, just make me feel like, well, it's really coming for me. It's a personalized recommendation for me, and I would enjoy using that. I know it's a bit creepy that something can have such an oversight over your life and your behavior, but if I can choose between, well, having that creepy AI-based thing in my ear, in my device, like handheld device or smartphone, but living a healthier life and having a chance for a longer life, or trying to keeping on trying to change my own behavior, well, I would do with the former option right away. Wow, again, such a future-oriented question here from Claudio Assenti. Good afternoon. Do you think we will see every of these health technologies for 2030, or do you think they will take more time? Jesus Christ, if it takes more time than that, we are all doomed. I mean, if for tens of millions of patients, these devices are at their homes already. They are using it every day. They have a connection with their general practitioner. They share the data. Their GPs are welcoming such data and insights and questions about how to use the data for behavior change. So for so many of us, it has already been happening. So if the question implies that by 2030, it would be a system-wise approach, I'm still not sure about that, because we will always have people who are against these innovations, who think medicine should be practiced in a traditional way and there is no place for technologies in that. And I respect their choice, but as a patient, I respect my choice as well. And I want to have a chance to use these technologies, to use more data. And I need my general practitioner as a partner in this. That's why I have the GP I have today, Dr. Réka Vernes. She's not my first GP, she's my third. So the first two didn't like my ideas so much. That's fine. But I need to use these data and these devices to have a chance, just a chance, for a longer and healthier life. So I'm saying that I'm trying to say with this is that you bring these changes into your own healthcare. You shouldn't wait for someone else or something else like a government or health insurance company to bring it onto you. You can make them change their way of working, because that's how the empowered patient movement started and has been going through in the US, in the most consumerist country in the world, that the patients started asking for things to take place in their care. I think that's how it should work. All right. Wow. Raka Banerjee asked the question about medication adherence. So how can digital health play a role in medication adherence? You've seen, I guess you've seen the news about Proteus Digital Health, the first company with an FDA-approved digital pill, a pill with a microchip embedded. So when patients follow the pill, it was possible to check through a smartphone app whether the patient took the pill and how it's being digested in their body. and they just went bankrupt. And many experts said that that's the end of the digital pill story. And of course, it's not. It's just one company going down because of management issues or financial issues. Who cares? But it's not about the technology behind it. So I think the way it can help is not in a general sense that everyone will use digital health services to have better medication adherence, because as an e-patient myself, I don't need medication adherence. Of course, I want to comply with the therapy that we decided together upon with my general practitioner, because I understand what's going on. But in some medical conditions where it's hard to comply with the treatment, like in some mental health conditions, schizophrenia and such, maybe elderly patients, it would make sense to use such services, but only in those conditions it makes sense to use such services. So I don't think that medication adherence digital health services will become mainstream, because many of us just don't need a nudge in the right direction, because we understand why we have to take that medication. And of course, we are more than happy to comply with the treatment that we agreed upon. Oof, wow. Keep on coming the questions. It's now clear that I won't be able to answer all of them, but I will still do my best to go through at least 12 from here. I will try to be shorter in my answers. Naina Sharma asked a very important question about the accuracy of these devices. How much can we rely on these devices for the accurate results? Good question. When it's a fitness tracker, it's fun. The number of steps a day is something that we shouldn't know by 99.9% with a 9.9% accuracy. But if it's no more than a few percentages of error rate, I'm fine with that. For the ECGs, it must be clinical grade. We need evidence-based studies behind them. That's why I highlighted the Cardia, which has about 40 studies behind them. For many others, I haven't seen enough papers describing what they are capable of doing. So when startups these days reach out to me, from startups doing virtual reality, fitness trackers, and many more, the first question I ask, well, can you share a peer-reviewed study backing your technology, your scientific claims? And if they can, then it's a high threshold, and we are in, and we can talk about what those technologies are capable of. But when they don't have any study behind them, it's just a matter of belief, and a matter of belief has no role to play in medicine and healthcare. Hussain Gandhi asked a question about the near future. What do you see as the key health technology in the next 5 years? I would say patient empowerment, which is not a technology but a concept. But besides that, health sensors that patients can use at home, artificial intelligence being used for medical decision making, for sure, personalized nutrition-based services / direct-to-consumer DNA services. Yeah, good question. Not VR, not AR. Those are very niche areas. And portable diagnostic devices like portable ultrasounds that physicians can use even at the bedside or the patient's home to make more in-depth analysis about doing their health assessment. All right. Kanan Sredar asked the question about AI. Currently, the focus in healthcare AI is machine learning. Do we see the use of deep learning in healthcare? When and what applications? I think I see both. Of course, deep learning is more high level, so you see more machine learning applications, but DeepMind is using more deep learning based applications in the collaborations they have in the NHS. So I think it depends on the problem. For image related tasks like in radiology, deep learning is the only thing to use. You can't use machine learning that efficiently for analyzing images or videos. So in that case, deep learning is the key. For more database services, machine learning is more than enough to analyze the data set. So I think that's how we see a diversification between the two methods under AI. Wow. Again, I'm trying to quick it up a bit and answer even more questions. Madhavi Chajukar asked about how practical is the use of 3D printed drugs for personalized therapy as per individual's genotype. Yeah, it's a two. I'm trying to answer it from two perspectives. One, There are 3D printed medications, and it's possible to print out some forms of medications with a 3D printer, but those are only used in epilepsy for now, being approved by the FDA. So we don't see those being used for personalized treatment options in healthcare in general. But there are some treatments where you need to use genetic-based services to find out whether the patient has a mutation that makes them metabolize that medication faster or makes them more sensitive to the same medication. And in those cases, like in the case of blood clotting medication in the US, providers need the physicians to check 2 mutations to make sure that they can prescribe the right dosage of a treatment. Wow. Michelle Lipke had an amazing question, and I know it's supposed to be poking me a bit, but it's not. I'm very happy that this question just came through. Do you eventually stand for or represent a longer and healthier life based on tech-driven behavior change? Is lasting behavior change driven by technologies really possible? It's a very good question. I believe in the notion that we all individually have to find the methods that work for us. My wife goes out for a running session when I go with her. She needs social motivation. She uses a fitness tracker, but she's not. It's not motivating her to check the data when she goes out for running. I would never go out for running without my fitness tracker. I hate running. It's not part of my life. I think it's against human nature. But if I see my data, I'm more than okay, and I'm going on. Data works for me. Social motivation works for her. There will be a mix that will work for different people. I think only fitness gurus can change behavior without any kind of external motivational source. I think technologies cannot change behavior, but I'm sure that we can only change behavior with good technologies. So it's still me changing and shaping my behavior constantly, but I do that by using good technologies that can really support me in that process. But just by relying on a technology, I'm not sure if I would change my behavior at all. So it's a really great question. John Fountain, well, we have to get to the end, about 10 minutes left, and now you are starting to poke me with these amazing questions. Future of healthcare, public funding or consumer choice? Does corporate interest worry you? I believe in the capitalist notion of digital health, that if there is a consumer demand for a device, then some company will make them available. And if they understand that to be able to use the device for a healthcare purpose, they need to provide, papers and peer-reviewed studies and so on, I think it can be done. But I understand that driving force, and that's why we have Fitbit and good fitness trackers, because tens of millions of us have been buying them for years, or soon almost for a decade. So I'm fine with that. At the same time, of course, I'm aware how these companies are selling my data to third parties. Of course, I know how they don't care about my individual privacy, but how they can make more money. I know that. That's based on this, I'm trying to still choose the right companies I'm buying trackers and fitness and health sensors from. I'm not naive. I know that quite probably I'm not doing a good job with that. But as long as I feel like I'm the one making that decision and I'm not being pushed by a company, government or health insurance company to use these devices, I'm not forced to use them, but I choose to use them. Ethically, I feel fine. I wanted to show you just one thing before we go to the last few questions. And the last thing is actually the most important thing that I wanted to start with. And this is not fitness tracking, but sleep tracking. This is my Fitbit Ionic that I've been using for 3 years. And it helps me be physically more active when I see how many steps I take a day. And that is just like 3,000 when I had 8 hours of calls. So I still go out for a run. But the real thing that I have this device for is the smart sleep alarm. Since 2018, they've had this smart sleep alarm functionality built in. And what I can do is every evening when I go to sleep, I just use the settings to make sure I give it 20 minutes. So in the morning, I give it 20 minutes to wake me up. For example, next morning I want to wake up between 6 a.m. and 6:20 a.m. and if I click start, that's what it will do. Next day, it will try to wake me up between 6 and 6:20 a.m. when I'm in light sleep and not deep sleep. And waking up in light sleep or deep sleep is a matter of life. Waking up in light sleep is like, I'm ready for the day. Waking up in deep sleep is needing cups of coffee and you hate life altogether. So I think if you're thinking about by now, to start experimenting with at least one health tracker or health sensor, that should be a smart sleep alarm. Not even a device, just an app. The favorite app I ever seen about this is called Sleep as Android for Android users and Sleep Cycle for iOS users. These are the two apps I've ever used and were really useful. Start with that and try to use the smart sleep alarm functionality and see yourself how refreshing it is to wake up in light sleep. A few more questions are coming in. Michaela asked about the results of blood tests. Like, wouldn't your blood test results be motivating? It would be. And I've used some at-home lab testing services, which turn out to be useful, like Imaware. Let me share the company's name here. You can also find the review we had about them on medicalfuturist.com. They send you a home kit, you give them a few droplets of blood and you send it back, and they give you a result about the different tests they have. I used Dante Labs from Italy about the COVID-19 antibody test, and it was negative, but it worked the same way, giving you a small lancet and you have to provide a few droplets of blood and then send back the sample. Easy peasy. So it would be motivating, but I don't see many of these at-home lab testing services booming in the industry. So I guess we have to wait a few more years until there's a driving force big enough from consumers like me to keep on coming the tests. Alejandro Ceballos asks about a very important question. To start a journey of managing my health, which devices you recommend? Again, I would recommend starting with scores between 1 and 10, giving a score about how physically healthy you feel that day, how happy you are, and how cognitively how focused you are. Just between 1 and 10. After a few days or maybe a week or two, you would find out how your algorithm works and what you need to do. For me, it was I had to find a way to force myself to exercise every single day for 30 minutes on average. I would start there, but if I had to say a device, I would start with a fitness tracker, because the data I get from these trackers is very useful in my life. It keeps me physically active. It keeps giving me scores and data about my sleep quality. So I keep on fine-tuning every now and then about how I can keep on shaping my behavior just because the data that my smartwatch provides me with. So I would start with that. All right, we getting to the last few minutes, so I think I'm able to answer a few more questions, and there are many actually that we will try to answer later on. I know I promised this once, but then there were 300 questions. Now it's about 30, so we will try to answer a few that I didn't have a chance to answer live. Muhammad asked this question about the accuracy of the ECGs I showed to you before. Well, the point is that those that have a peer-reviewed study in the background, those are accurate. I know that the Cardia has these studies, more than 40 as I mentioned before. For the others, like the Vive, I've seen some recommendations from cardiologists, but I haven't seen peer-reviewed studies yet. I guess they will come because it takes time, but we don't have to decide whether they are accurate or not. We have to make the decision based on the peer-reviewed studies that these companies publish. All right, maybe 2 more questions. Alejandro also had a question about universities. First, welcome from Paraguay. Any universities that are pushing the limits, know, you can see me, pushing the limits of the developments of the new wave of doctors in this new health world. When we checked, there were about 5 medical schools worldwide with curriculums about digital health. Stanford is one of the examples, and the other is the one that we are teaching at Semmelweis Medical School in Budapest, and we plan to make a course about that, of course, publicly and online available quite soon. But there are only 5 or 10 maybe at most, so it's not so motivating, but I guess we will see more and more medical schools adopting curriculums in which they teach their medical professionals the concepts of digital health. Because you don't have to teach them how to use a fitness tracker. You must teach them how to work with empowered patients and how to assess the quality of a device. So whatever device comes at them later on, they will be able to make their own assessment. And that's a hard thing to teach to a future medical professional. It's not impossible, we've shown that, but it's a hard thing to do. Wow. Nadine Nagy asked the big picture question about the future of pharmacies. And we published analysis about that on medicalfuturist.com, but summarizing that one up, one thing was like a scenario was about pharmacies becoming one-stop healthcare services because they have time and they have expertise. Pharmacists are trained almost the same way as medical professionals, and their expertise is not used mostly in the grocery stores and pharmacies worldwide, but it could be used to help patients keep on doing behavior change in the long term, or they could become, and that's I know it's a long-term scenario, like personalized hotspots for medicine. Like you've seen some kiosk-based designs where you can use many devices to provide like a health checkup about the patient and provide them with remote care. But also with 3D printing medications and technologies like that, I think pharmacists could actively contribute to healthcare. So thinking in terms of decades, what if I could just go to my pharmacist and they will be able to print out my medications based on my genetic background in the dosage that I need based on my genomic data. It's not as far-fetched as you might think. All right, maybe one more question here. Oh yeah, Akhil asked a great question about the platforms for all these. I use many devices, and I have tested over 100 of these digital health devices. I use about 2 or 3 daily and maybe 5 once every month or so. There is no common platform. There will never be. Fitbit will never communicate with the Cardia device or Vive, and the NEMA sensor will not communicate with my medical record system in my hospital's healthcare IT system. It's up to you, the individual, how you can solve this. I try to bring data through my apps to my GP, and we discuss those. But then even she helps me work to create a platform where we can store the same things. Like from every blood test, there are 3 or 4 parameters that interest us. So she asked me to open an Excel spreadsheet and keep on inputting those pieces of data. We have to do it in a manual way, like in the old days, and I think it's going to be the case for long. If not, then it's going to be the biggest milestone in the history of medicine that someone comes up with a platform that can integrate all these data from all these devices. I think even for a decade or more from now, it's going to be up to you how you deal with all these. And I'm sorry about that, but that's why a partner physician is so important in this relationship. So I think it's time to finish the stream. You've been amazing, like always. You've had amazing questions. Please feel free to check out medicalfuturist.com, where you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of analysis about all these things that we publish twice a week. Check out our social media channels on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Please, and let me tell you about the community we have on patreon.com, where we have about 200 patrons who form an excellent community. These are really like advanced medical futurists themselves, and we are creating content for them that nobody else can see, only the patrons on patreon.com. So please feel free to check it out on patreon.com/medicalfuturist. Thank you for Krista, our social media manager, for moderating the discussion and sharing links or so. And thank you so much for all of you for being here. I think it's the new normal. So you won't see me going around on stages and conference rooms for a long time, even from now. That's why I keep on giving lectures and keynotes many times a week from my home. We are now building a studio, and I plan to stream much more often, not only because that's the new normal, but because I enjoy being with you in this way and have a discussion with you. So please keep the questions coming. We will keep coming up with exciting topics, and hopefully see you in 2 or 4 weeks. Of course, we will share everything on our channels. And thank you so much for taking part in this live, the Medical Futurist Q&A. And I hope to see you next time too. Thank you.